Let's get ready to rumble. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. All right.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
I'm glad there was not a right-wing takeover, but we end up with a Republican, a Rockefeller Republican in blackface with Barack Obama, so that our struggle in regard to poverty intensifies.
That's a pretty rough assessment of President Obama.
Oh, that's what we have. That's what we have. Richard Nixon is to the left of him on health care. Richard Nixon's to the left of him on guaranteed income. And the same policies in terms of imperial foreign policy is at.
Well, welcome. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can find me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can find me here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. That was Dr. Cornel West, and the gentleman sitting next to him, that was Tavis Smiley. And I wanted to open with that video because I just wanted to send you a little reminder that during this time, when Dr. West and Tavis Smiley spoke out against Barack Obama, it was not popular to do so. They received a lot of heat and pushback from that. But hold that clip into your mind, because that is going to be important later on when we talk about the Cornel West story tonight. But shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Rumble. And welcome, guys. Welcome back. I'm going to give shout outs to people in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and get going. What's up, ICU Free 2? Can you cover SCOTUS denying water and future water rights to the Navajo Nation? All because the Biden administration says if SCOTUS ruled in favor of the tribes, more tribes would file lawsuits. I just found out about that today. I'm going to cover that on Sunday. Shout out to Mary. It says, what do you mean concerned about Marianne Williamson's campaign? Concerned that it will not succeed? That it will weaken other candidates? Concerned that it would not succeed? I should have been more clear about that. But go ahead and take that poll if you haven't had a chance to do so. Shout out to Mac. Marianne doesn't concern me. She definitely doesn't concern the establishment, given she's running in a party that will defeat her, as they've already shown they have the ability to tilt the scales. Shout out to Peter, says Marianne who? Bryce, happy Friday, Sabby. Nope, she came at our own whack as fuck. Sup, everyone. What's going on? Hannah says, I voted no. Shout out to Ashura, says, who are these 11%? I don't know. That's a good question. Ashura's talking about the poll. What's going on? Ilhanar says, hello to Bryce. Greetings, Lorez says, salutations, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Smash the like. Not concerned about Marianne Williamson. LOL. Have you heard RFK on Rogan podcast? They're going to get him for all that truth. I did hear that, or part of it. It's hard for me to watch an entire Rogan podcast because it's just so long. It's so long. What's going on, Corey, who's a Sabby member, says, Sabby Friday, let's go. Shout out to Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, happy Friday to one and all. Greetings, Will, says, Marianne is really not what I would call a candidate to take seriously. Yikes. She really only excites certain bourgeois sorts. Greetings, Flash Flood area. Biden weakens Biden. FFS. Shout out to Robert. Hello, Larez. Greetings. Sean Miller says, your notification worked for me. Shout out to N3N says, hi, Sabby. Greetings. Greg Bruce says, hello. Shout out to Gamer for Life, also saying hello. What's going on? Alex says West 2024. And I see those ice cubes there. That's pretty interesting. I thought I said Tavis. Did I say Travis? Oh, sorry. Tavis Smiley. I thought I said Tavis. My bad. Shout out to Nikki's World says, hello, everyone. Greeting, how to sober. The biggest voting bloc is the 47 million independents. We don't need Republicans or Democrats for Cornel to win, but also this is movement politics. We're here to disrupt. What's going on? Rick says, hey, y'all. And shout out to Jonathan says, hey, everyone. Hey, Sabby. It's the 22nd of loneliness. Ha, 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 ha. Okay, let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons, and then we'll dive right into tonight's stories. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. Pretty meaty group there. And of course, members. Thank you guys so much. You can see all of their names here. Also scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker as well. And shout out to I think I did this one last night. Yes, I shouted out Alan last night. But thank you all so much. Okay. We have quite a bit to discuss tonight. Let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail. This should be a pretty interesting show. I swear these stories are connected, and I think you're going to be able to figure out what the connection is as we go into them. Tonight, we're going to discuss RFK Jr. weakens Biden. Is that true? And what issue is he weakening Biden on? We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Cornel West poll alarm. We have some poll numbers for you guys. And we're also going to take a little bit of a step back in time to remind you of where Jill Stein was and some of the things that you may see happen again with a third-party candidate. We're also going to discuss Marianne Williamson campaign update. I have some news, and it is pretty yikes, but we got to talk about it. And last but not least, I am going to discuss the Oregon ballot measure wins. So let's get into it. Thank you, Ashura, for the super chat. I thought his name was Travis and not Tavis. Don't know. What did I say? I thought it was Tavis. I thought it was Tavis, Smiley. Anywho, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, Tavis. Okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. Okie doke. Let's go ahead and get started with this story about Marianne Williamson. Now, a while back, we did report that her first campaign manager, Peter Dow, had decided to step down as campaign manager. We also mentioned that her communications director, Jason, is actually running for office as a Green. He ran before as a Democrat, but he also stepped down during that same time. But she did bring on a new campaign manager. Now, there has been some changes again. So we're going to get into that. But first, I want to start with her appearance here on Fox Business. Marianne Williamson is discussing the need to force the debate. Now, I want to give a shout out here to Case Study QB for this clip, always doing the darn thing. Marianne Williamson discusses force the debate as the DNC continues to prevent Democratic primary debates. Let's go ahead and get into it.
A whopping 80% of Democrats say that Joe Biden should debate his competitors in the run-up to 2024. You can agree with that one. That's right. This is according to USA Today, Suffolk University polling, Marianne. The DNC so far says they will not sponsor any debates. What are you going to do to be heard, Marianne? And what are you going to do about this pushback on you and on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? No debating.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I'll be hitting the ground in New Hampshire. I'll be hitting the ground in South Carolina. I'll be hitting the ground wherever there are voters in these primary campaigns. There is, as you just mentioned, more and more of a mainstream conversation. 8 out of 10 likely Democratic voters have said that they want to see debates. It is important that the voters hear the president and Robert F. Kennedy and me put forth our agendas, say what we would do as candidates against the Republicans in 2024, and even more importantly, what we would do with the power of the presidency over the next 4 years. So I'm very happy that so many Americans are waking up to this and putting pressure on the DNC. So far, they're saying, no, not happening. But I think this conversation is getting bigger and bigger. More and more, the polls are showing that there is questioning about the president and whether or not people actually want him to be the nominee. Well, so
before we go on, I want to go back to that poll. Let's take a look at this poll. Democrats want debates. So this is USA Today and Suffolk University poll. 80% want to see 2024 debates. And 72% of Biden voters want to see debates. Now, I told you guys before, I think every candidate should be allowed to debate, just period, whether I support them or not. But what's very telling about this poll, that 72% of Biden voters that want to see a debate, that right there tells me that 72% is not all in for Joe Biden. They're not, just basically guaranteeing their vote for Joe Biden, even though they voted for him before. And that should be very alarming to Joe Biden, to the Democratic Party, to the whole Biden administration. That should be concerned. Kamala Harris should think about this as well. Because the thing is that this means they want to hear other people's voice. They want to hear their opinion. They want to hear where they stand on these issues. And that is very interesting because the other poll that you continue to see over and over shows that Joe Biden has now a 70% approval rating, or that, 50 something percent of people plan to vote for him again. If Joe Biden has an approval rating of 70%, I told you, I question that percentage. I really question that. Even people I know who were like ride or die Biden, like after he won, even they starting to feel some kind of way. So just FYI. So I question that 70%. How is it that so-called 70% of people approve of his job, but 72% want to see debates? That's why I told you, don't trust that number. Don't trust that number. All right, we're going back in.
His competitors in the run-up to 2024. You've been
I agree with that one.
That's right. This is according to USA Today, Suffolk University polling, Marianne. The DNC so far says they will not sponsor any debates. What are you going to do to be heard, Marianne? And what are you going to do about this pushback on you and on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? No debating.
I want to clear something up. When she says the DNC says they're not going to sponsor any debates, I want to frame this differently. The Democratic Party is telling you there is not going to be debates. And I think that's the way that she should have framed it. You throw in words like sponsor, and then some people may look at it as though, the DNC doesn't want to pay for it. Just make it very plain. The DNC is saying, no, there will not be primary debates. And put it to the American people like that so that people can start to wake up.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I'll be hitting the ground in New Hampshire. I'll be hitting the ground in South Carolina. I'll be hitting the ground wherever there are voters in these primary campaigns. There is, as you just mentioned, more and more of a mainstream conversation. 8 out of 10 likely Democratic voters have said that they want to see debates. It is important that the voters hear the president and Robert F. Kennedy and me put forth our agendas, say what we would do as candidates against the Republicans in 2024, and even more importantly, what we would do with the power of the presidency over the next 4 years. So I'm very happy that so many Americans are waking up to this and putting pressure on the DNC. So far, they're saying, no, not happening. But I think this conversation is getting bigger and bigger. More and more, the polls are showing that there is questioning about the president and whether or not people actually want him to be the nominee. So we'll see.
I just want to chime in here for a second. Notice she said she'll be hitting the ground in New Hampshire. So the reason why people like her and RFK Jr. are focusing on New Hampshire is because New Hampshire and Iowa said, screw you, DNC. We're still going to have early primary regardless. There's a fine that they'll have to pay for that. They'll just pay that fine. But they're not changing their schedule, regardless of what the Democratic Party is saying. So what that means is that Joe Biden most likely will not be on the ballot in the early primary states of Iowa and New Hampshire, because he already decided to forego that when the Democratic Party decided that they were going to make South Carolina the first primary voting state. So what that means is that for candidates like Marianne and RFK Jr., this could really make them shine. If he's not on that ballot and they're doing well in New Hampshire and Iowa, that actually sets the tone of the race. And it'll take some of that focus off of South Carolina and put that focus back where it was before in New Hampshire and Iowa. Now, here we go. Mainstream media, particularly CNN, MSNBC, liberal media, they're going to try to suppress that information. I really do believe. But I think that's where probably Fox will come in and report that information. I can pretty much guarantee you CNN is going to be heavily focusing on South Carolina, pretending as if probably New Hampshire and Iowa aren't even happening. But I think that's where Fox will come in to pick up that mantle to let the American people know, yeah, this is happening. And for people who think that Democrats don't watch Fox News, that's actually false. Remember, Tucker Carlson had the most popular show on Fox News? All of those viewers were not Republicans. Democrats also watch Tucker Carlson. So just keep that in mind.
What happens in the next few weeks, but hopefully the pressure will mount and the debates will occur. I look forward to them, let me tell you.
This came up during the 2016 election as well. Bernie Sanders wanted to be the nominee, but the DNC said, no, we want Hillary. Are you being bullied by the DNC right now?
There is, Maria, in my experience, what I call a political media industrial complex. So the DNC doesn't bully you directly, but its minions are everywhere. And by the way,
No, I'm sorry. Listen to this again. Listen to this. This is a missed opportunity for Marianne.
Complex. So the DNC.
Oh, sorry. Let me go back a little bit. This was a missed opportunity. This is how I know she not being serious. Listen.
Nominee, but the DNC said, no, we want Hillary. Are you being bullied by the DNC right now?
Simple question. Are you being bullied by the DNC because they are saying you're not going to have debates? Okay. Listen to what Marianne says.
There is, Maria, in my experience, what I call a political media industrial complex. So the DNC doesn't bully you directly.
That's not true. Missed opportunity. Marianne says the DNC doesn't bully you directly. They don't? Let's think about something here for just a second, because she's going to bring up the media, but I'm going to point to something else. When you had Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton 2016, and Bernie Sanders won every county in West Virginia, and the super delegates decided to give West Virginia to Hillary Clinton, that was bullying Bernie Sanders directly. That's without the media. They didn't need the media's help with that at all. Okay, that's on the ground. So yes, they do bully you directly. And Marianne should have said yes to that question. And she should have brought up the example that I just mentioned. Now, why is Marianne not doing that? Why is Marianne not doing that? Why isn't she calling out what happened to Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton? That should be a red flag for all of you watching. Let's go on. There's more.
But its minions are everywhere. And by the way, I'm not saying the Republican Party is any different with their candidates. I want to make that very clear. Okay. But yes, I'm not being treated. I do not believe I'm being treated fairly in the press. No. Well, but on the other hand, I'm in the kitchen, so I can't complain about the heat. But yeah, it's not fair. It's not a fair. It's not fair.
The problem here is I sense hesitancy. And Sab don't like hesitancy. I don't like this. I don't like this. Missed opportunity.
Are you being bullied by the DNC right now?
There is, Maria, in my experience, what I call a political media industrial complex. So the DNC doesn't bully you directly, but its minions are everywhere. And by the way, I'm not saying the Republican Party is any.
You see how she leaves off with that? Look. Watch this again.
Call a political media industrial complex. So the DNC doesn't bully you directly, but its minions are everywhere. And by the way, I'm not saying the
Its minions are everywhere.
Republican Party is any different with their candidates. I want to make that very clear. Okay. But yes, I'm not being treated. I do not believe I'm being treated fairly in the press. No. Well, but on the other hand, I'm in the kitchen, so I can't complain about the heat. But yeah, it's not fair.
I'm in the kitchen, but I can't complain about the heat. You guys see the problem? You said this is a problem? You call it out. Call all of it out. This was a problem I had with Bernie Sanders. He wasn't willing to call it out either. Wasn't willing to do so.
It's not a fair. It's not fair.
It's not fair. Now, we all know the media has its role, and the media does what they do. Obviously, they're going to back the corporate candidates. This is what the media does, right? They're going to back the candidate that meets the status quo. But why did Marianne give specific examples of what the DNC has already done? Not just the media. It's not just about you, Marianne. It's also about people like what happened to Bernie Sanders. How could you not mention this? How could you not do it? And then she seemed a little hesitant. I'm like, this is how I know you're not serious about pushing back on power. This is how I know you're not serious about pushing back on corruption. This is how I know you're not serious about pushing back on establishment Democrats. Because in a way, Marianne, she's hesitant because she don't really want to call out the Democratic Party for what it really is. And you can see the difference between her and Dr. West. Dr. West just called it flat out. He called it out. How many interviews has Dr. West done where he brought up the fact that the DNC cheated Bernie Sanders? Marianne can't say this when she specifically is asked, are you being bullied by the DNC? Missed opportunity. And then there's the aspect of Marianne's campaign altogether. Now, I told you a while back that her first campaign manager decided to step down. There was controversy over that on Twitter, yada, yada, yada. But now the second campaign manager has also decided to step down. Guys, this is too close together. Marianne has lost 2 campaign managers within what, a month? What has it been, a couple of weeks? When we talked about Peter Dow? Don't believe me? Listen to this. Marianne Williamson loses second campaign manager in 2 months. 2 months. Let's go. Let's get into it. This is not good. Say what you want, but it's not. Listen to this. Marianne Williamson has lost her second campaign manager in as many months in what has proven to be a rocky 2024 presidential bid. Rosa Calderon's departure was announced Monday, and they mentioned the Vanguard. Wow. On a small far left podcast and independently confirmed by 2 sources to Politico, granted anonymity to discuss internal staffing dynamics. One person familiar with the campaign said that Calderon quit. Now, here's the problem. Politico wrote an article about Marianne, about her candidacy in 2020. And they talked about how they interviewed former staff members that were part of her campaign during that time. And they said that Marianne was difficult to work with. That article said that she was abusive. There was a statement that she threw a phone at someone. Marianne has dismissed all of this and said that, she never threw a phone at anybody. She said if she was, mean to somebody, she apologizes, that kind of thing. I told you they've done this same article before about Bernie Sanders, right? So it could be a smear piece. I said it could be a smear piece, or there could be some truth to it. We don't know. So here's the thing. Now you lose the second campaign manager within 2 months of the first one stepping down. This can give people the impression that Marianne is not easy to work with. This can give people the impression that Marianne is difficult. And do we necessarily have proof of that to say? Not necessarily, but it does not look good. The optics is not good. Let's go on. I have more to say. She tried to right the ship and lead this campaign. Marianne knocked her down every chance she got. So this is coming from the person, their source, that told them that Rosa quit. So here's another person complaining about Marianne's behavior toward the staff. Calderon was first hired as a fundraiser for the Williamson campaign in late April, and then took on the top job in May after the interim campaign manager, Peter Dow, stepped down along with deputy campaign manager Jason Call. So Peter Dow, let's all remember, he was an advisor for Hillary Clinton. So he came from the Hillary Clinton campaign. He has since moved more left. Now he says like he's apparently against the two-party system. I don't know. Peter all over the place. Jason Call, he's been on the show before. He ran for Congress as a Democrat. He's now running as a Green. So he's another one that has left this duopoly. So let's go on. Calderon's experience in such roles was limited. She ran for Congress in 2018, but lost. During that campaign, she was sentenced to probation after allegedly stealing money from a local Democratic Party group to spend on gas, movie downloads, and Bottle Rock music festival tickets. I'm not sure if Marianne knew about that before she chose her as campaign manager, but that's concerning. Let's go on. She had also embellished her resume, calling herself a director of development when she was, in fact, a contractor at the progressive nonprofit Our Revolution. Williamson, the campaign press secretary, and Calderon did not respond to a request for comment. See, this right here is also concerning. Marianne and Rosa did not respond to this. So again, it makes people kind of look at you a little side eye. What is going on over there? What is happening with that campaign? Let's go on. Williamson is running a long shot campaign in the Democratic Party. Her third bid for a public office since 2014. Now, some of you may be wondering, third, isn't this her second? This is her third. She actually ran for office before as an independent. That was way back in the day. Not for president, though. I believe that was for a local position. But since the campaign launched in March, staff have been fleeing the team. There have been at least 7 departures in the last month. 7. So the campaign manager and Jason Call, those are just the ones that were basically published. According to Politico, they're saying that 7 people have left her campaign. Now, again, Politico is pro-Democrat establishment, so there could be some embellishing here. It may not be that many, but this is still concerning. I don't know what to say. The campaign raised less than $1 million in the first quarter of 2023. And it is not running any broadcast advertising. So this here, not running broadcast advertising, it is still early. So just keep that in mind. We're not going to hold that against the campaign. Williamson hasn't been on the campaign trail for the last several weeks. Instead, she's been doing virtual events so she could be in London for the birth of her first grandchild. She has been hosting online roundtables, which she calls firelight chats, but has not traveled to any of the early voting states since April. This is a play on the Bernie Sanders fireside chats, which actually came from FDR, I believe. So What do you say, guys? That it's not a good look. It is not a good look. And I know, you know, some people, like, I don't have like hatred towards people who don't want to do the same thing that I do. But I do know some people actually, like some of them very genuinely good people who actually liked Marianne and supported, you know, was in support of her campaign. And this is not a good look. It shows people, again, that you might be difficult to work with. It also gives people the impression that the campaign does not have it together. And you're running for president, the first thing people start to think is, how are you going to lead the country or lead the country, and you can't keep staff? So it's very concerning. And I know a lot of people, when Marianne Williamson announced, hopped on board for this. And they were like, let's go. Marianne is going to be the progressive candidate for president. We recruited her. We asked her to do this. This is going to be our new Bernie. And from day one, it has been a nightmare. This did not go in the direction that I think people thought it was going to go in. People were not overly excited about Marianne the way they were excited about Bernie Sanders. They're not the same. They don't bring that same type of energy. So those people have constantly had to come, like Crystal and Kyle, for example, they have constantly had to come and defend Marianne and tell you why she is the best candidate. Then RFK Jr. announces now he running on an anti-war message, which Marianne is not running on. And then they bring up, well, you can't be supporting RFK Jr. basically because of his position, like on the jab and all that kind of stuff. Then Dr. West announced that he's running. And he decides to run through the Green Party. So it's just, and then you have Kyle on his show saying that, well, yeah, it's right that he's doing green now instead of the People's Party after they criticized him running through the People's Party. But then he went on to say that Marianne has the best platform. How much longer are people going to defend this campaign at this point in time? How much longer? This campaign is done. I'm here to tell you. Some people may not want to hear this. It's done. So it's just, that's right, Chip. Hit that like button, guys. Smash that like button. I don't even know. This is a joke. This is a joke, and it's embarrassing. No way on earth you could even try to convince me that Marianne was going to bring that same type of fire and energy that Bernie Sanders did 2 election cycles in a row. No way. No way. So and she's still kind of trying to carry water for the Democratic Party. Call them out for what they are. Call them out. It's easier to do that when you're not running in the party. Just keeping it real. It's easier for Dr. West to do that, not running through the party. So does not look good. That does not look good for Marianne. At this point, I'm just here to tell you that campaign, in my opinion, I believe that campaign is done. And it's not just because of this issue. It's her position on Israel and Palestine. It's her position on the war in Ukraine, her foreign policy positions. It's the statements that she's made on some of these interviews. When people ask her, are you going to tell people to endorse Joe Biden? The last comment she made to Kim Iverson was, I don't need to share that information with people. Nah, bruh, if you're not willing to call out the Democratic Party, if you're not willing to go scorch earth and tell the truth about Joe Biden and call him out by name, I'm looking at you with a side eye. That's how I'm looking at you. Because that right there tells me you trying to find a way to see if you can get yourself another position if Joe Biden is the nominee and Joe Biden wins. That's what Bernie did. That's what Elizabeth Warren did. That's what Pete Buttigieg did. Everybody played their role so that they could still get a little bit of something if Biden won. And I think that's what Marianne might be doing. Otherwise, you'd be calling Joe Biden out left and right. So don't even. Interesting times. Peter says, Tavis Smiley is a great interviewer. I used to watch his show on PBS all the time. Yeah, he is really good. He has a radio show now. But I think when I first saw him, I believe it was when he was on BET. But yeah, he does awesome interviews. DG Daniels, personally, I'm tired of those fake debates. They need a completely new format. I think change could be good, DG. Thank you for the super chat, Eric. Calling the Vanguard a far left podcast shows a combination of how lazy Politico is or how misinformed people are about how the political spectrum actually works. Well, remember, Politico, they are for the Democrat establishment. You know, they're going to defend Joe Biden. So anyone that's, I guess, coming from that Bernie movement, they're going to call far left. Just keep it like that. Just keeping it real. Boy, I tell you. Jonathan, Marianne never said she would support Biden. She says she will support her country, not a party. I didn't say she said she would support Biden. I said in these interviews, when she's asked that question, especially in that Kim Iverson interview, her response was she didn't believe she owed people an answer to that question. And that is problematic for me. So I'm sorry. It is what it is. You're not fooling me with this shit. You're not fooling me with it. I saw it with Bernie Sanders. I've seen it with other people as well. No. If that were the case, you'd have no problem telling people not to support this clown. Get out of here. No. Okay. Moving on to our next story here. So there have been talks recently about this concern that the Democratic Party may be having in reference to RFK Jr. possibly weakening Joe Biden. Now, where would he weaken Joe Biden right now? Apparently, it's on the war issue, the anti-war message, which this war with Russia and Ukraine is not as popular with the American people as I think the Biden administration thought it would be, especially the billions of dollars that have gone out the door to Ukraine. More people were criticizing it. Some people that weren't criticizing it in the beginning and did support it, even some of those people have now started to flip and say, okay, enough is enough. Like, this is ridiculous, right? So they had this discussion, a panel discussion on CNN about how they feel RFK Jr. is actually hurting Joe Biden. Now, my thing is this: if you're not good on the war issue, that's Joe Biden's fault. Joe Biden should try to be strong on that issue, but he's not going to be. He's a warmonger, just like all the ones that came before him. He's status quo. That's why he's in the White House. But I want you to hear what they said, because I thought this is pretty interesting. Now, shout out to Case Steady QB for this clip. Case has been killing it. CNN discussing RFK Jr. calling for the U.S. to stop the provocation and seek peace with Russia. Listen to this. There's a couple of clips here.
Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is speaking out tonight about the war in Ukraine and calling on the U.S. to stop, in his words, provocations of Russia.
I abhor Russia's brutal and bloody invasion of that nation. But we must understand that our government has also contributed to its circumstances through repeated, deliberate provocations of Russia going back to the 1990s.
Is RFK Jr. presenting a problem for Joe Biden? My panel is back. Coleman, RFK Jr.'s poll numbers are at 20% right now. So Biden's at 60%. RFK Jr., 20%, Marianne Williamson, 8%, someone else, 8%. So I know that you think that Democrats shouldn't sort of laugh this off.
Yeah.
Let's look at this poll for just a second right here. If Joe Biden were not the incumbent, people would look at this a little bit differently, right? But he's the incumbent. How do you allow someone to pull 20%? And for people who think this isn't much, this is significant. That is huge. I've never seen this in my lifetime. I've never seen this. So 20% that they are pulling away, or he's pulling away, and Marianne's pulling away 8%. Together, they're pulling away 28%. And then there's that other 8% that said somebody else. What does that say about your job as president? What does that tell you about what Joe Biden has been doing? What does that say, people? Let's go on.
Shouldn't sort of laugh this off.
Yeah, no, I don't think Democrats should. I think Democrats, I worry, will make a similar mistake that was made with Trump, which is he seems like a clown. He's saying all this crazy stuff. He's an outsider. His fans seem taken in by misinformation. Let's just wish that this goes away by not taking it seriously. And then
I have to pause here for a second so I can tell you who this gentleman is. So Coleman Hughes, if I'm not mistaken, I thought Coleman Hughes was a conservative. So just keep that in mind, okay? For those of you who are not familiar with him, just keep that in mind.
And we're all blindsided.
And what might happen if they don't take him seriously?
Well, I think, frankly, he appeals to a lot of people, and we should make a serious effort to understand why. Right? Obviously, I watched the whole Joe Rogan episode. A lot of his ideas are just absolutely kooky, unfounded, right? But he's also speaking to a very real resentment that people feel of the government's handling of COVID. And, you know, we know the pharmaceutical industry is the #1 lobbyer. And, you know, the CDC, the FDA, NIH, unfortunately, there's a revolving door and regulatory capture and corruption that's legal. And people feel enormous resentment about how that led to policies that were heavy-handed. And RFK is speaking to that. So Democrats could do one of two things. They can just focus on his like really, you know, looniest claims and just dismiss this guy's crazy, or they could come up with a counter narrative that's like, we care about that stuff too, but we have a better way to solve it.
Thoughts?
Well,
So I think that's a good point, what he just mentioned there. And they're not even trying to, again, because they don't want to have primary debates, they're not even trying to respond to it. You know, they're not even trying to defend, by they, I mean, the Democrats, they're not even trying to defend their position in reference to where RFK Jr. stands. They're not even trying to.
The way they could do it is talk about, you know, the fact the Biden administration has been pushing the.
Okay, and we're going to go to the second clip here because it's a thread, and it picks up here.
Or prescription drug costs against the wishes of said drug companies. But look, it's clear, polling has shown for a long time that there is a desire for an alternative to Joe Biden for a variety of different reasons among Democrats. His numbers are not as high as they should be for a typical incumbent president. I don't think that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is the solution to that. The fact he's getting pumped up, particularly by folks on the right, as a credible alternative to Joe Biden, I think speaks to who he most appeals to. That doesn't mean there's not Venn diagram overlap. There were Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump fans in the world. And so, no, he should not be dismissed, but his claims need to be interrogated in a fact-based way. And when they are, many of his strongest claims break down upon the slightest bit of scrutiny. But
that's not going to stop his supporters from supporting him. This is the same mistake that I think that the Democratic Party made with Donald Trump, and media as well. Media made this mistake with Donald Trump when he ran against Hillary Clinton. They really thought that if they called out, you know, criticized Donald Trump's statements and some of the rhetoric that he had, they really thought that, you know, his supporters would wake up and say, oh, fuck no, not this guy. Did not happen. Did not happen. So they still don't get that. They still don't understand that, like, by criticizing RFK Jr.'s position on the jab, that doesn't pull his supporters away from him. Most likely, most of his supporters already know where he stands on that issue. So if they had a problem with that, they wouldn't be supporting him in the first damn place. This idea does not work. It's not going to pull people away from RFK Jr. because you call him crazy or you call him kooky or whatever. If anything, that's going to make some of them start to look at you a certain kind of way and say, why are you so busy trying to smear this guy so much? That's going to make them look at CNN and question their motives.
He sounds very convincing because he's inundated himself with this stuff.
Well, 2008, a gentleman by the name of Barack Obama was not taken seriously. He was very low in the polls, and the Clintons said, okay, don't attack him. He'll be our HUD secretary someday. I went on to become president.
Barack Obama was chosen by Wall Street, though. Make sure you mention that, Tony. Make sure you tell them that Barack Obama was chosen by Wall Street, and he was also establishment, and he was status quo. So they were okay with Obama. Let's just keep it real.
2016, Donald Trump not taken seriously by anybody. Candidates I work for, Scott Walker, Jeb Bush, he'll flame out of the race. He'll say something destructive. We thought the McCain incident was going to cause that, became the president. I don't think RFK Jr. becomes the president, but he could do heavy damage to the president. He could weaken him going into the...
And there's an additional factor.
So they got to go after him now.
Yeah, and there's an additional factor, too, which is the halo effect of his name. Not just his last name, but about his father. You know, Robert F. Kennedy holds a very sacred place in the memory of this country, in part because he was able to create coalitions, particularly among African Americans and poor working class whites, that no other candidate's really been able to cobble together. And the fact that he was assassinated 55 years ago this month. And so that itself, I think, lends him an authority on the surface that you should not underestimate at your peril.
I like RFK Jr. by the way.
Disaggregation of the support as between people who like the name Kennedy, or as Coleman said, people who are actually resonating with the message, and people who just want anyone but Biden. I was actually intrigued by Julian Castro's comments today, not signaling necessarily a run, but saying, we need Biden hasn't delivered on these promises, saying the kinds of things that a primary opponent starts to say. I mean, it seems to me that a rational.
Okay, and then we'll go into the next clip, but I do just want to say something here when they talk about weakening Joe Biden. Even before RFK Jr. announced he was running and before Marianne announced she was running, Biden had already weakened himself. Why Biden weakens himself when he makes press conferences and he doesn't know where he's at, calls people the wrong names. Everybody can see that there's a issue there in reference to cognitive decline. Biden weakens himself when he doesn't fulfill his campaign promises. When we have high inflation in this country, when people are struggling to pay for groceries, when he kicked all those people off of Medicaid, when he lifted the emergency status of the pandemic. So the thing is that Biden really don't need any help making himself look bad. This is reality of the situation. But again, like I said, if the Democratic Party was that concerned about it, if the DNC was that concerned about it, then if anything, they would want to have some type of debate so that Joe Biden can respond to some of these things. But they just kind of want to keep Biden tucked away as much as possible because he keeps embarrassing himself at public appearances.
Actual Democrat running against Joe Biden might have a real chance.
Do you think RFK Jr. does hurt Biden somehow?
I mean, his posters say, I'm a Kennedy Democrat. That's good advertising. But beneath that advertising is someone who's way out of step with the Democratic Party on.
He's already hurting him.
How?
He's very likable, and he has a message that's reaching a demography that the president needs. And if he gets 10, 12, 15, 20% of the vote, the Republicans will say, this guy's weak, even in his own base. And you could get a strange candidate on the Republican side that goes after the RFK people. It's not impossible.
That, I think, is actually the bigger threat.
That's the crossover. We got Bernie Sanders voters, by the way, in 2016.
The mainstreaming of wild anti-vax conspiracy theories, the mainstreaming of this kind of both siding on Russia, Ukraine, that I think is exactly right. This lends ammunition to a future Republican candidate.
Yeah, this is.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This focus of smearing RFK Jr. as anti-jab, which RFK Jr. has said multiple times that he is not. But that focus is not going to take his supporters away from him. Okay? Most people aren't even thinking. Everyday working class people, if I were to tell them what media is saying about RFK Jr., oh yeah, they're saying he's anti, people would just look at me and be like, and I care about this because why? The everyday working Joe Schmo is not thinking about this. So I think it's a mistake. It is an absolute mistake to focus on that. That is not going to help Joe Biden.
The code pink Donald Trump overlap on foreign policy, which we, but the framing of I'm a Kennedy Democrat speaks to something different. That tradition means to people a certain patriotic liberalism that I think is open, and this Kennedy's policies don't actually back up. But the fact he's got 20% does speak to a certain softness in Joe Biden's approval rate. There's a softness.
Kennedy-esque on camera.
Well, you can look like whatever you want.
He seems strong, and he comes across much stronger and much more, able than Joe Biden.
All right, we'll leave it there, guys.
So let me tell you, I'm going to show you something. RFK Jr. actually had a speech in New Hampshire where he talked about foreign policy. When it comes to the war issue, he is very strong on this issue. This is something him and Dr. West have in common. They're strong on the anti-war issue. So it's just, to me, it's like, if people are struggling with whether or not they're going to support Joe Biden again, they're probably looking for someone who is different, right? They're not looking for someone who's saying the same things as Joe Biden saying. If that's the case, you might as well just support Joe Biden. But this is where he is strong. And I want you to hear some of this, because I got to tell you, I really believe that if you went out and didn't just poll people who have landlines, by the way, a lot of people, especially Gen Z, climate activists, etc., tired of these damn wars. There have been multiple anti-war rallies where people have come across different political ideologies. They've come together for that one message. And there are people in this country that have become single issue voters. Why is that? Because their needs have not been met. And one of the needs to them, which they may feel is the most important, that's what they're deciding to focus on. And for some people in this country, the anti-war issue, that's number one. And if you come correct with that, you got their support. If you are a single issue voter, why are you supporting Joe Biden, and what issue would you focus on to support him? Think about this, people. We have Joe Biden right now. So if you're a single issue voter, what are the issues that Joe Biden brings to the table that would make you say, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because of this issue? He didn't fulfill the student loan debt cancellation promise. He didn't do that. He didn't expand health care. He didn't do that. He promised to do that too. He didn't promise Medicare for all, but he promised to expand health care. He didn't do that either. So don't forget about the single issue voters. Listen to part of this speech.
The nation that November turned the nation down another path. His successors have launched one war after another, along with the ceaseless expansion of our military. Some call it the forever war. Americans used to identify herself as a peaceful nation. In fact, our the framers of our Constitution said that that democracy was inconsistent with an imperium abroad, that if we tried to make ourselves an imperial nation abroad, that we would turn into a surveillance state, a garrison state, a security state at home, and that we would also destroy our economy. We would drain it, as happens with every empire. Every empire ends itself through the expansion of the military, overexpansion of its military abroad.
And if you look at our economy right now, what's happening? Professor Wolf has talked about this multiple times, that the American empire is crumbling, right? So all of the investment, all the money poured into the military industrial complex, poured into that defense budget, billions of dollars spent on destroying other countries, people. And look what's happening to our economy. It was only a matter of time.
And the founders knew that. John Quincy Adams spoke for all of them when he said, America goes not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. Today, I want to recall that memory, because this forever war, which has so drained our nation's vitality, now threatens to plunge the world into the unspeakable horror of nuclear Armageddon. And I speak, of course, of the situation in Ukraine. I abhor Russia's brutal and bloody invasion of that nation. But we must understand that our government has also contributed to its circumstances through repeated, deliberate provocations of Russia going back to the 1990s.
I can't think of one Democrat in Congress right now that's willing to say what he just said about our government's role in these wars. Yeah, some of them, Jamal Bowman will say he's anti-war, but you don't vote that way. So you have to pay close attention to that. That piece is especially important. People may argue about, whether or not Russia was right to invade or not. Like, you may disagree with him on that. But this piece right here, where he talks about how the U.S. government was involved in this, and it goes all the way back to the 1990s. I'd say it even goes back further than that. But that's important to say. And that's important for people to hear. Joe Biden is not saying that, and he's not going to say that. He's going to protect the U.S. government at all costs. So you have to be willing to call it out. This is the big difference here.
Democratic and Republican administrations have pushed NATO to Russia's borders, violating our own solemn promise from the early 90s when we pledged that if Russia made this terrible concession of moving 400,000 troops out of East Germany and allowing the unification of Germany under a NATO army, a hostile army, that we would commit that after that, we would not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And James Baker gave that assurance, as did the British government officials and many, many others. And yet, today, we have surrounded Russia. We have moved it not 1 inch to the east, but 1,000 miles and 14 nations. We have surrounded Russia with missiles and military bases, something that we would never tolerate if the Russians did that to us.
And that's the piece I think that should hit home for a lot of people that I want you to try to think about. This fact that imagine if it was happening to the United States. Imagine if Russia, if their military was surrounding the US the way that we have these 800 military bases all around the world. Imagine if it was us in that position. Maybe hard to think about because that's not the way that it's been. But try to put yourself in those other countries. Try to put yourself in their shoes.
And statements from our government officials and think tanks lay out the goals for the Ukraine war. Regime change in Russia, the overthrow of Vladimir Putin. This is what President Biden has said is our purpose in the Ukraine. The disabling and exhaustion of the Russian military.
You have to be willing to say that. You have to be willing to call that out. Yes, this is an attempt at regime change. That's what it's really about. People are afraid to say that. The regressives in Congress won't say that. Jamal Bowman said at the event in DC, we got to drag this guy over the finish line. No, you don't. No, you don't. They won't say that. Ro Khanna won't say that, even though he signed that letter saying that he himself and others were very much concerned about the rise of Nazification in countries like Ukraine and Poland. Ro Khanna won't say that. AOC won't say that. Jamal Bowman won't say that. Biden not going to say it. Bernie don't want to say it. You see the difference?
And the dismembering of the Russian Federation. None of these objectives have anything to do with helping the Ukraine, which of course was the pretext for our involvement in the war. That's when our leaders told us that we were there for a humanitarian mission. But
it was never about helping those people. We were told the same thing with Afghanistan. We were told the same thing with Iraq. We got to help protect the women and the children, people. We got to protect them. If you were really trying to protect them, you would stay out of their country and you wouldn't kill innocent civilians.
They've since acknowledged that there is a broader geopolitical agenda and that Ukraine is simply a pawn in a proxy war between the United States and Russia. Like teenagers playing World of Warcraft, these warmongers inside U.S. leadership draw up war games and scenarios and pretend that a nuclear war is winnable. That is a dangerous lie. It's an illusion that my uncle's defense secretary, Robert McNamara, called mass psychosis. These individuals do not appreciate what John F. Kennedy understood when he said that of nuclear war, quote, all that we have built, all that we have worked for would be destroyed in the first 24 hours. Even one nuclear explosion spreads radioactivity around the world. Can you imagine the consequence of a full nuclear exchange? President Kennedy did. That's why he said, quote, above all, while defending our own vital interests, nuclear powers must avert those confrontations which bring an adversary to a choice of either humiliating retreat of a nuclear war. To adopt that kind of course in the nuclear age would be evidence of the bankruptcy of our policy or a collective death wish for humanity. Let me say that again. Nuclear powers must avert those confrontations which bring an adversary to a choice of either humiliating retreat or a nuclear war. The shameful fact is that for the last 20 years, the advocates of a militaristic foreign policy within the U.S. leadership have done exactly the opposite. Their belligerent strategy of maximum confrontation extends beyond Russia to China, where the same group within our government hopes to use Taiwan as a geopolitical pawn, the same way they used Iraq and Syria and now Ukraine, to further a vain fantasy of world domination through violent confrontation. Let's leave off geopolitics for a moment and take the matter of war and peace a little deeper. President Kennedy understood that peace begins with our basic attitudes and beliefs. He spoke of the futility of passively waiting for the other side to become enlightened. We, quote, we must examine our own attitudes, he said, as individuals and as a nation, for our attitude is as essential to theirs, end quote. We should, he said, begin by looking inward. Yes, back in 1963, a politician really said that. A political leader voiced what would be considered today a spiritual maximum or a spiritual principle. Let's take up that call from 60 years ago and ask Americans, all of us, to re-examine our attitude. We have been immersed in a foreign policy discourse that is all about adversaries and threats and allies and enemies and domination.
100%. 100%.
We've become addicted to comic book good versus evil narratives that erase complexity and blind us to the legitimate motives and the legitimate cultural and economic concerns and the legitimate security concerns of other peoples and other nations. We have internalized and institutionalized a reflex of violence as the response for any and all crises. Everything becomes a war. The war on drugs, the war on terror.
And the war on drugs was a failure, complete failure. But this is the way that our government has approached situations. This is the way our government has approached conflict. We have to go to battle. We need to declare a war on this. This is the only way they seem to respond. But there's profit in that.
On cancer, the war on climate change. This way of thinking predisposes us to wage endless wars abroad, wars and coups and bombs and drones and regime change operations and support for paramilitaries and juntas and dictators, none of this has made us safer, and none of it has burnished our leadership or our moral authority. But more importantly, we must ask ourselves, is this really who we are? Is this what we want to be? Is that what Americans' founders envisioned?
Joe Biden would not make this statement. You can watch the entire, I'm not going to play the entire speech because it is longer, but you can watch the entire speech on NTD. Democratic presidential candidate RFK Jr. delivers foreign policy speech. So you can watch the rest of it. But he brings up the American, the founding fathers and that type of thing. And Lucy actually discussed this on RBN, Lucy and Roger Meadows. And it was Lucy that actually brought this to my attention, that the founding fathers didn't even want political parties because they felt that it would be divisive, that you would put people in different camps. You wouldn't have direct democracy. Is this what the American people want? Is this what we really want to be as a country? Is this what we want to be known for? What do the people have to say? That speech in particular is a powerful speech. You get a chance, listen to the rest of it. But on this particular issue, that is miles ahead of where Joe Biden is. Miles ahead. It is obvious when it comes to the war issue. He knows a lot about this. He's studied it. He's also done the research. Like this, you can tell is something that he's very passionate about. Now, yes, there's his position on like the jab and all that kind of stuff, yada, yada. But if I were him, my focus, my number one would be that. The anti-war message. Everybody has their issue, right? Like Bernie Sanders, his big issue was Medicare for all. And that's what he focused on a lot, right? So if I was RFK Jr., I wouldn't even go down the rabbit hole of the whole jab thing. Like if he's asked about it, obviously, yeah, he should answer it. But I don't think he should volunteer that information because, they're just ready to smear him about that and call him something that he's not and that type of thing. But that message right there, the anti-war message, that is one of the issues that he's running on that is uniting people across political ideologies. So should Joe Biden be concerned? If I was Joe Biden, I would not dismiss RFK Jr. at this point. I would not. He's been on a lot of shows. He's getting more press. Even though a lot of it is smears, he's still getting press. Remember, sometimes bad press is good press, boo. Ask Eminem about bad press and how well that worked out for him. So I would be concerned. And I think pretending like RFK Jr. doesn't exist, I don't think that helps you, Biden. Thank you for the super chat, Eric. If I recall correctly, Sabby, aren't these polls that CNN and these other mainstream outlets using mostly talk to individuals with landlines? Yeah. Part of the reason why I'm not polled. Thank you, Zach. Tell him that Tony the Tiger Obama was great. Thank you for this as well, Zach. Michelle Moo would make a better president. LMAO is referring to Michelle Wu. Shout out to Chris Stegman for becoming a Sabby member. Thank you so much. Big whoop whoop. Thank you, Darren. Got here late. Hi, Sabby. Thanks for all you do. Welcome. A kid says, Sabby, yes, on point. Please consider USA Empire Hollywood propaganda continual push of American exceptionalism makes it so that we believe the U.S. in its right to do all the wrong it creates. That is true. Thank you for the super sticker, Baza. I don't know what that picture is. I don't know what that is. Huh. Interesting. Is it a hat or a mask? I don't know. And thank you for this as well, Darren. Dear RFK, it's nuclear, not nuclear. Damn. People do that, though. I've heard people call it both ways. Both ways. Now, do I agree with his position on Israel and Palestine? Absolutely not. Hell to the no, 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 no. He needs to, no. He needs to fix that. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, old geologist. Bring it. And thank you for this tip, Roger Meadows. Anti-jab is not the win libs think it'll be. They'll keep mentioning the jab. They will F around and find out. They'd be reminding us of mandates and Dems putting them on lockdown while they went and got their hair done, washed their clothes at a restaurant, French laundry, put small businesses out of business while no lockdowns for big business, all while having a jab forced on them. That's a good point, Roger. Very good point there. Okie doke. We are moving on to our next story. So Dr. West, a recent poll came out, and I'm going to show you that poll in just a second, but I actually want to go back. We're going to do a little walkthrough time. I want to go back to a statement that Cornel West made about Barack Obama. And I want people to understand that during this time, this was 12 years ago, during this time, it was not okay to do that, especially if you were Black. And Dr. West got a lot of heat for doing this, as did Tavis Smiley, which I showed you guys earlier. But he just called it as he saw it. So some people were not happy with the fact that Cornel West announced that he's running third party. They were like, no, you can't do that. That's going to be a vote for Trump. I just want to go on record saying this. When you vote for someone, the vote is for the person that you vote for. Just go ahead and clear the air about that. But he saw what happened to Bernie Sanders. He remembers Barack Obama. Like, he's been through he's seen all this. And I told you before, you need to leave this two-party system. It's not functioning for you, especially African-American. If you're African-American, I'm here to tell you, you don't have to stick with the Democratic Party. Leave it. Because they haven't done anything for the African-American community. In fact, we said defund the police. They decided to fund the police. Ice Cube told you. Ice Cube told you. If there's no Black agenda, why should we support Joe Biden? Remember, Ice Cube said that, right? He got a lot of heat for that on Twitter. People lost their freaking minds. Who does Cube think he is? But it takes a real one, not just to criticize the duopoly, but to walk completely away from it and run outside the duopoly. It takes a real one. And I want to remind you about consistency. Now, Dr. West has changed his opinion about things over time, but when it came to Barack Obama, he was right to call out Barack Obama during that time. What he mentioned in this clip here, some people didn't come to realize until years later. Some people still defend Barack Obama. But Dr. West was right, and he was brave to do so during a time when it was not popular to have this opinion. Let's go on.
You know, as you well know, African Americans overwhelmingly support President Obama. There's no question about it. 95% voting for him. But there are some African Americans who believe that President Obama hasn't done enough for the poor and working class. And activist Cornel West had a stinging critique of the president.
January 2008 in South Carolina. Democratic candidates prepared to debate. Princeton University professor Cornel West strongly endorsed then Senator Barack Obama.
I think he's got the vision, he's got the newness, he's got the freshness.
Fast forward to this week, West is now strongly criticizing President Obama, calling him, quote, a black puppet and black mascot of Wall Street.
He was right. He was right about that. Sebastian, this is 12 years ago.
Well, when I look at the mass unemployment, mass underemployment, mass incarceration, especially in the Black community, but I'm talking about poor and working people across the board, it seems to have a very low priority. It seems to be an afterthought. That's what I mean when I say one becomes a puppet for corporate plutocrats and a mascot for Wall Street oligarchs.
West tells truthdig.com, quote, I think my dear brother Barack Obama has a certain fear of black men. It's understandable. As a young brother who grows up in a white context, brilliant African father, he's always had to fear being a white man with black skin.
Could you imagine the type of heat that he got for that statement at that time? People didn't want you criticizing Barack Obama. Barack Obama goes to Flint. He pretends to drink dirty water. People still didn't want to criticize him. How dare you say bad things about Barack Obama as if he's God? But Cornel West did it anyway. Notice the headline. Look at the headline, guys. Look at what it says. Former backer slams President Obama. Former backer. They didn't even want to put Dr. West's name in the headline. Okay.
I asked West what he meant.
I don't think he has a fear of black men. I think he has a certain distance from free black men who are willing to speak the truth, both about America and about himself.
West's comments are outright inflammatory, but he admits he has a personal issue with Mr. Obama. He says he campaigned for Mr. Obama but never got a thanks and couldn't get tickets to the inauguration. But West says he doesn't want that to distract from a larger message that black people are being left behind, even under a black president.
That's right. And that's a big story. So look, I heavily believed in Barack Obama. I supported him in 2008. I was super excited about him. I thought he was going to be the change that we needed. Oh, he said, yes, we can. And he was talking about like universal health care, like those types of things, not Medicare for all, but he was talking about like universal, like expanding and all that kind of stuff. Like I thought that this is the answer. Finally, I was fooled. I think a lot of us was. I was deceived. Hoodwinked, bamboozled, as Malcolm X would have said. Barack Obama is one of the liberals that I think Malcolm X tried to warn us about. You have to be careful about those.
The issue is there, says Politico's Carrie Budoff-Brown.
And that, I think, scratches at a very real disappointment that exists right now in the liberal base, the base of the Democratic Party, towards the president, that he is not or has not been the strong progressive that they imagined he would be.
President Obama, while campaigning on a message of change, has surrounded himself with old Washington hands. And the unemployment rate for African Americans is 16%. We asked the White House to comment, but they declined. But Obama's supporters say, sure, it's easy for outsiders to criticize the president. Roland Martin says the president isn't a professor or a social activist, and he does have multiple constituencies.
Here comes Roland Martin. They use people like Roland Martin to keep black people in the Democratic Party. Let me come in and run cover for Obama. Let me run cover for Joe Biden, which he's doing right now. Let me continue to do this. Don't leave, black people. Don't leave. This isn't unusual. This isn't unusual to use someone from your own community to work against you. That's Roland Martin. Don't do it, guys. Vote blue.
Is he black enough? Is he Christian enough? Is he, what is it? And so to me, that is a waste of time. But I think what also has to be recognized is that you're dealing with somebody who is a politician, who has a much different role and responsibility.
Now, administration supporters say the president hasn't just ignored the plight of the poor and the working families, and they highlight some of the accomplishments of the administration, from reforming Wall Street to the health care law to the Ledbetter Act that gave equal pay to men and women.
Reforming Wall Street. How the hell do you reform Wall Street? Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Did he really reform Wall Street? How do you reform an entity that owns the government? Make that make sense. How do you do that? You don't. He lied. I'm sorry. No. Eric says Obama reformed Wall Street. We did it, you guys. No. They still own the politicians. Get out of here. You bailed out Wall Street instead of the American people during the housing crisis. Reform my ass. So let's keep it real. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit to Hillary Clinton and Jill Stein, where I want to remind you again, Professor West got more criticism because he chose to endorse Jill Stein over Hillary Clinton. Democracy Now! Amy Goodman did not look too happy about that. Let's get into this.
You are endorsing Dr. Jill Stein. You were a surrogate for Bernie Sanders. You spoke all over the country for him.
Yes.
What made you decide to support the Green Party presidential candidate as opposed to Hillary Clinton?
Well, I've never been tied to one party or one candidate or even one institution. And that's true even one church. As a Christian, I'm committed to truth and justice. And Brother Bernie, no doubt, was the standard bearer for truth and justice during the primary at a national level, at a highly visible level. Once he endorsed Hillary Clinton, who for me is a neoliberal disaster, it was clear.
What do you mean by that?
A neoliberal disaster is one who generates a mass incarceration regime, who deregulates banks and markets, who promotes chaos of regime change in Libya, supports military coups in Honduras, undermines some of the magnificent efforts in Haiti of working people and so forth. That's the record of Hillary Clinton. So there was no way when my dear brother, who I love very deeply, Bernie Sanders, said she'll make an outstanding president. I said, oh, I disagree with my brother. I don't think she'll make an outstanding president at all. Yep. She's a
So just a reminder, this was him in choosing to endorse Jill Stein over Hillary Clinton. Also, again, particularly at that time, not a popular position. There were a lot of people that had Trump derangement syndrome that said you can't do that. That'll give us Donald Trump. Even when you do the math, you'll see that the votes for Jill Stein actually did not take votes away from Hillary Clinton for the most part. So the thing is, even without Jill Stein in that race, Hillary Clinton still loses because Hillary Clinton didn't know how to campaign well to the point where she couldn't even follow her husband's model of going to talk to people in the Rust Belt. Hillary lost on her own, but mainstream media isn't going to tell you that. This is another example of Professor West taking a strong position on something when it was not popular to do so.
Militarist. She's a hawk. She could take us into war with Russia. She could take us into war with Iran. I mean, I think she's dangerous in terms of her neoliberal ideology. Not as a woman, because I'm supporting, of course, my dear sister Jill Stein. I think after a magnificent campaign of Bernie Sanders, the next step is the green step. The next step is the progressive step. And when you're calling for reparations, you're calling for the release of prisoners who have been historically unfairly treated, especially tied to nonviolent crimes. And then saying they should vote, and that vote should never be taken away. When you're calling putting people and planet and peace before profits. Sister Jill Stein, for me, is somebody that's worth fighting for. And she's not a spoiler. You know, a lot of people use that term, spoiler. If Hillary Clinton can't make the case to progressives, she doesn't deserve our vote. Now,
everybody hear that? If Hillary Clinton couldn't make the claim to progressives, she didn't deserve our vote. You can see the rest of this video on Democracy Now! It's called Cornel West, Why I Endorse Green Party's Jill Stein Over a Neoliberal Disaster, Hillary Clinton. This video is from 6 years ago. Another example, when he took a position on something when it was not popular. Now, this issue with Jill Stein and this issue with Cornel West also, now running third party, I want to take you back to a time to remind you something about the ballot access, which a lot of people have criticized in reference to a third party run. I just want to remind you how much access Jill Stein actually had. This is important for people to see. So yes, we're going back in time. Going back in time. Before I play the video, look at this poll. Now, this is Hillary, Trump, that's Gary Johnson. I believe that's Gary Johnson. Yeah, he looked different in that picture. And Jill Stein, right? Okay, so Gary Johnson and Jill Stein were the third party candidates. Look at this. Colorado, Virginia, Florida, and North Carolina. Jill Stein, at this point of this interview, She was polling at 6% in Colorado, 5% in Virginia, 4% in Florida, of all places. That one was surprising to me, 2% in North Carolina. And then you see the support, obviously, for Hillary and for Donald Trump. I want to point out something here. Notice Hillary was beating Trump at this point, right? But obviously, she did not go on to win. So one of the questions that comes up with this interview with Jill Stein, they're going to ask her, well, how are you going to be on the ballot? Listen to this. I just want to take you back so that we can all remember, so we know what's coming.
Let's bring in one of those candidates, Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party's nominee for president. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Betty.
All right, so as of Friday, you're now confirmed on the ballot in 28 states. So in the limited time that we have left before the election, can you get on the ballot in every state? And if not, then what?
Well, we have ballot drives going on in every state that hasn't already closed. And
just going to pause it here and I'll let her finish talking. At this point in time, look at how many states, I'm not going to go through all of them, but look at this: Washington, California, Texas, Hawaii, Alaska, yada, yada, yada. Okay, at that point in time, if I remember correctly, by the end, I believe Jill Stein was on the ballot in over 40 states, if I remember correctly. So just keep that in mind.
we are on track to be on the ballot for just about every American. In 2012, we were on the ballot for 85% of voters. This time it'll be more like 95, maybe even 98%.
And you're confident in that?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
95, 98%. So for the people who say, oh, but they don't have ballot access. Remember, the Green Party's been around for a while. It's not a new party. Like, they had the time to hit the ground running and to get that access, the ballot access. So I just want to remind you, we'll play a little bit more and then we'll go to the next.
So, you know, we're getting a little more than, a month out from the first debate. What will you be doing between now and September 23rd to get on that stage?
Exactly what we're doing now, which is to get the word out, to let the American people know that they have other choices. Because as Americans, we not only have a right to vote, we have a right to know who it is that we can vote for. And any candidate that is on the ballot for enough Americans that they could actually be numerically elected, that they could win the Electoral College vote, deserves to be known by the American public. So we're encouraging people to come to our website, Jill2016.com, and to join our campaign to open up the debates and ensure that the American people have a right to know. Because in this election, like none other, the American people dislike and distrust the two establishment candidates more than ever before and are actually clamoring for other choices and other voices. So we intend to make that possible by getting into those debates.
Well, if you don't.
And here we are again. So you see, at this point, she was on the ballot in 28 states. And then I want to show you when they changed the headline here. Third party candidates hit 20% in the Colorado poll. So just a reminder, because here we go again, where people don't want these two establishment candidates, where most likely looks like it's going to be Trump and Biden again. So there are other options out there. And speaking of polls, I want to show you what's happening now. This is the Emerson poll. So I tweeted this. Cornel West is already polling at 6% as a third party candidate. Right out the gate. You only need 5% to get the federal funding. So he's already over the threshold to get the federal funding, guys. Right out the gate. This is why I said, if you're going to do third party, we needed to have someone with a bigger name, someone that people know. Like, this is why some people wanted to push for Jesse Ventura in 2020. You need someone that a lot of people know. Cornel West has been on so many outlets throughout his career. A lot of people know who he is. And you see the difference. You already see the difference if it's someone that people know. Now look at this poll. First, this is the poll without Dr. West's name mentioned. 44% for Joe, 43% for Trump, 9% somebody else, 4% undecided, right? So even if you look at the someone else and undecided, that's still 13% that's not feeling it. When you add Cornel West into this equation, now you have Trump 41%, Biden 40%, Cornel West 6%. Again, right out the gate. For a third party candidate, this is a sign. That's a sign, right? So CJ broke this down so effortlessly, and I think you need to hear what he said about this. If a third party candidate, Cornel West, appears on the ballot alongside Trump and Biden, he pulls in 6% of support, dropping Biden's support to 40%, 1 point below Trump's 41%. When West is added to the ballot test, he pulls 15% of support from Black voters, 13% from voters under 35. 2 key voting blocks for President Biden. Now that's coming from Spencer Kimball, who's the director of Emerson College Poll. So CJ is quoting The Hill here. This is really important for people to see. A third party candidate would drag President Biden down in a rematch with former President Trump in 2024, according to the Emerson College National Poll released Thursday. Now, some people are upset. Some people actually said to me, but then that means Joe Biden would lose and the Democrats would lose. Good. I'm sorry. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say? Oh, no, we can't have that. No, fuck them. Let them lose. Let them lose so damn bad that they're embarrassed to leave the house. Let them lose. That's what needs to happen. Let them lose and let them see this is what happens when you don't do for the American people like you said that you would. Let them lose. But this part right here is important. He pulls 15% of support from Black voters, 13% from voters under 35. And what does that tell you? This demographic, I've been trying to tell people, Gen Z, they're not playing with that. Not having it. Why do you think you have these guys doing the TikTok videos? The young guys, the college dudes, the high school dudes doing the TikTok videos, trying to encourage Gen Z people to come out and support Joe Biden because they know people ain't buying this shit. They know Gen Z are not buying this. They know they're upset about not canceling that student loan debt that he promised. Roe v. Wade has still not been codified into law. And it was Gen Z who actually helped Democrats win in November in the midterms. So they came out and showed up for the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party has not given them anything in return. I've said this before. When I was an academic advisor, this was the student population I advised was Gen Z. This is a different generation, and they are not going to put up with the bullshit because their lives are directly affected years down the road. They will be impacted by climate change. They will be impacted by AI taking over some of these jobs. Some of you won't be alive when these things happen. So they're not doing it. This is why they got out in the streets. George Floyd protests, they came out by the thousands. They don't play that. They're not sitting at home saying, but what can we do? No, they do it. So this should be a wake-up call. Democratic Party cannot win without the Black vote. Can't. And that will not always be the case. If I'm looking at demographic shifts in the future, it'll eventually get to the point where the Democratic Party won't need the Black vote to win. So people have to pay attention to that. That's why I'm telling you, Black people, Democratic Party isn't doing anything for the Black community. You need to walk away from them now while we still have leverage because they need us to win. When it gets to the point where they do not need us to win, it'll be too late for you to walk away then. It won't matter to them. Everybody got to wake up. So this is very, very telling. Like I said, he doesn't have to win. Cornel West don't have to win. but he can run a campaign strong enough and well enough to send a message that both parties suck to the point where he drags Biden down so damn bad, the Democratic Party will be embarrassed to show their face. We need to start thinking about these things. We need to start thinking about the fact that if Joe Biden does win, I'm telling you, I really believe he will resign that first year and Kamala Harris will be your president. Is that what you want? You want her making foreign policy decisions? Come on. Let's think about this logically. Let's think about it. And I will say, for the people who tell me that now is not the time, when is the damn time? I've heard this my whole life. You know, I'm pretty sure MLK and other civil rights activists heard this during the civil rights movement. Can't do it now, Martin. Now's not the time. When is the damn time? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, when we're dead, when is the time? It's now or never. If you're going to go, go big. Go big. Thank you so much, Mary. Charlemagne the rapper asked Obama in a video what he did for the Black community, and Obama danced around the statement. Yep. Gamer says Democratic Party changes you, not the other way around. Bingo. Thank you, a kid. Cornel West is a true fearless leader. His analysis of Obama's actions were correct 100%. And Cornel lost opportunities, yet he did not sway. Right. And he lost, a tenure position opportunity at Harvard University because he, defended the Palestinian people's rights. These are things to remember. Thank you for the super chat, Darren. Dr. Adolph Reed wrote in 1996 that Obama was a phony and a tool of Chicago's North Side. He said he was a phony. That sounds like something Professor Reed would say. Oh, man, was a phony and a tool of Chicago's North Side big money. Kudos to Dr. West for seeing the truth. And thank you, DC. Jill Stein was not allowed on the debate stage despite positive polls, if you recall, and was arrested in 2012 for trying to get into the debate venue. Yep, I remember that. I remember. You guys remember those from South Park? I remember. All right. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. I remember. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. RFK forgot to mention currency debasement along with overextending of the military brings empires down from the inside. Hey, Sab, you don't have to imagine. Russia did try to put nuclear weapons pointed at our border in Cuba. Now China is doing it and they're losing their mind. Ask Suge how bad press worked out for death row. While we ask presidential candidates for things we want that requires Congress to pass, keep in mind there are laws already on the books they can enforce without Congress. Do for the U.S. what Obama did for Libby, Montana. Then dare Congress not to pass a law once they get a taste of Medicare for all. They, of course, will hope SCOTUS strikes it down to use them as cover, but we'll see. Also ask, will they invoke the 1890 Sherman antitrust? Next time they say now is not the time. Tell them I agree yesterday was. Ooh, that's a good response, Roger. That's a good one. Thank you for the super chat, Vinny. Cornel West campaign should be focused on exposing the duopoly and how it's all set up to trap blacks. Then they can go after the black swing voters. That's a good idea as well. Good idea. Okie doke. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button, guys. That helps me with the algo. And we are moving on to our final story, which is Oregon. So we've been covering the ballot measures in all the different states that have ballot measures on the show. And we've now made it to Oregon, which is pretty interesting state. So Oregon, this is how ballot measures work in this state. Citizens of Oregon may initiate legislation as either a state statute or a constitutional amendment. both through direct means, meaning after a successful petition drive, it goes straight to the ballot, although it has to weigh in on to pass or ratify. In Oregon, citizens also have the power to repeal legislation via veto referendum. The Oregon State Legislature may also place measures on the ballot as legislatively referred constitutional amendments or legislatively referred state statutes with a majority vote of each chamber. Single subject rule. In Oregon, each proposed measure must address only one subject. This means you can't have, a lot of states have this rule, you can't have a ballot measure that actually covers two subjects and you just loop that as like one measure. You can't combine for Oregon. We're going to go down here to number of signatures. The number of signatures required to qualify for the ballot. The number of signatures required in Oregon is tied to the number of votes cast for the office of governor in the state's most recent gubernatorial election. 8% for initiated constitutional amendments, 6% for initiated state statutes, and 4% for veto referendum. Deadlines. Petitions are scheduled biannually? Is this supposed to be biannually, Roger? I think this is supposed to be biannually. And petitioners have approximately 2 years to circulate petitions and must be submitted 4 months prior to the next regular general election. Supermajority. Only ballot measures that propose changing vote requirements require supermajority. Passed in 1998, Oregon Ballot Measure 63 amended the state constitution to require that. This provision also applies to legislatively referred ballot measures. Okay, let's get to the measures. Oregon Measure 111, Right to Healthcare Amendment. Now, I was really curious about this one. This is not Medicare for all, FYI, guys. This is not Medicare for all, but it's the right to healthcare. So this one I was interested in. It says a yes vote supported amending the state constitution to require that the state ensure that every resident of Oregon has access to cost-effective, clinically appropriate, and affordable healthcare as a fundamental right. So this goes to define cost-effective, right? What does the state consider to be cost-effective? So you got to think about this for a second. This measure passed by 50.73%. So that was close. It goes on to say the amendment required that the state to balance the obligation of ensuring a right to health care against funding public schools and other essential public services. The amendment stated that legal remedies for lawsuits brought against the proposed section may not interfere with the balance between a right to health care and funding other essential public services. So let's see who supported this. Democrat politicians supported it, including U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley. Let's go on here. Some of the unions that supported it: Oregon AFL-CIO, Oregon Academy of Family Physicians, to name a few. Organizations: ACLU of Oregon, League of Women Voters of Oregon, to name a few. One of the arguments was Oregon can ensure this fundamental right with a proven cost-effective system. Again, I would say define cost-effective. Countries around the world have implemented single-payer healthcare systems that meet these criteria with simplified, transparent practices and greatly expanded patient choice. These countries spend less per person than the complex U.S. system, and they got better health outcomes. Well said, Charles, who opposed Republican politicians, including State Senator Fred Girod. Here's one of the arguments. This requires that the state to force some people to provide health care to others. You see how they frame this? It means that the state will have to send doctors and nurses to remote areas at a salary set by the state to give everyone their right to health care. Let me say something about this real quick. Would that be the case if there were hospitals in these rural areas? Would that be the case if people actually had family practice, facilities everywhere, even in those remote areas? That's part of the problem. After all, if you have a right to have health care, how are you going to get it if someone else doesn't give it to you? This is the dumbest thing. Oh my God. Oh my God, this doesn't make any sense. This guy's ridiculous. This woman, excuse me, this is Kim Wallen. In fact, to those obligated to provide the service and to those obligated to pay for it, it is the opposite of a freedom. It is coercion. Supporters say that this measure does not force the state to spend any money on it and that the courts cannot force it to. They know healthcare for all equals the entire state budget. So they essentially say that it's only a virtue signal with no strings attached. Kim, this is the dumbest shit. I'm sorry. It's just stupid. People actually arguing about giving people healthcare. Give me a break. Campaign finance money. So there was over $800,000 spent to support this measure and no money spent to oppose it. That's very important in reference to cash contributions. And then, but when you go here under support, it says the following table includes contribution expenditure totals for the committee in support of the initiative. So it shows you how that comes up with that, over that $800,000. But we've shown this before about these ballot initiatives. Typically, the ones that have the most money spent towards it, those are usually the ones that win, right? So there was a lot of money spent to support this. I will say that. Commentary from Roger Meadows here. Yo, Marco, I know you are watching. What's going on with your fellow Oregonians? Is that what they called it? Oregonians, man. Ratification of 50.8%. Nearly half of y'all don't think you have a right to health care. Holy crap, Sabby. Did you see what Representative Kim Wallen said? That's the one I just read. She was like, you mean the state is expected to take care of people who lack the resources? I swear these people need a serious lesson on the government is supposed to look out for everyone's welfare, not to mention promote it. As it says in the preamble, well, the people have spoken, but at least we got to see where the people are directly without some politician standing in the way. This is why I never felt comfortable with national polls that said single payer has a 73 approval rating. You cannot truly have an honest accounting of where people are on this issue if you do not do a state by state basis, which is why every state in the country needs to be a citizen ballot initiative state. Even though this was not a citizen ballot initiative, but was a legislative initiative put forth to the people for a vote. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but it's true. If you really want to know how the people feel on the issues, then we have to vote on the issues. And not everyone lives in a ballot initiative state. I'm in Massachusetts. We are a BI state. So when I go to vote, I do get to vote directly on issues, not just for politicians, right? But every state should have that right. That's how you see where the voters actually stand. We don't do that nationally in this country. We elect politicians and hope that they do the right thing. And that's why a lot of us are still left behind. I'll finish the rest of Oregon on Sunday. I do want to go ahead and get to that poll. We can go ahead and show that, Eric. And I apologize, guys, if I didn't word this properly. I don't think I did. But what I was asking is, are you concerned about Marianne Williamson's campaign in reference to, are you concerned that it's not doing well? That's how I should have said. I was in a hurry. Crap. Anywho, over 700 votes, 15% of you said yes. 74% of you said no. Jeez, yikes. 11% said not sure. Wow. Well, I think that speaks volumes there. That speaks volumes. All right, guys. I will be back on Sunday, right? We do have a couple of people. Who's coming on? I have a couple of guests coming on. Thursday, Dr. Sandy Darity will be here. I think Jill's going to come on. I think Jill's looking at her calendar, but Jill Stein should be coming on at some point. I feel like there's someone else. I forgot. Oh, well. I'll give it. Oh, yes, Kit. Thank you, Miguel. Yes. Sunday. We're doing news, but I'm going to start off with a panel. Kit Cabello, Delilah Barrios. She was a Green candidate for governor of Texas. She's coming on along with Chuck Modi. He's going to be on here. And I think I got everybody because I know Terrence said the poll. Okay. I think I mentioned everyone, I hope. Anywho, third party or bust. We're going to have a panel discussion about this, about Green Party, about, what Dr. West is trying to do. And it's really great. We're having someone on, Delilah. She's been on the show multiple times, but someone who ran as a Green. So Delilah would be able to give like her experience, as well. And is this the time to go third party or bust? So join me Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. That should be fun. I love doing panels and I haven't been able to do them as much as I wanted to. But yeah, look forward to that. Other than that, kiddos, Jimmy was here last night. I think I'll do a couple of clips from that interview for just like shorter segments. But he did say that apparently like they're not going to be streaming for 2 weeks. So you guys are going to have to find someone else to watch on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next 2 weeks. And I'm not live on those days. So that should be interesting. But anywho, thanks so much for hanging out with me, guys. It's been a fun time. I'm about to head out. If you didn't have a chance to do so, smash that like button. Help me out with the algo. I am on the road to 50K. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get there. Social Blade says September. So we shall see. We shall see. All right, guys. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.